This video is released under FreeBSD documentation license, which means, amongst other things, no warranties whatsoever, and you can use it for whatever you want. Second of all, I'm not a medical professional, so I don't really know what is required of a lung ventilation device. This is a bit like my best guess. It appears we are currently running out of lung ventilation devices. New ones cost about $15,000 to make and take a while to produce. And despite best efforts, we are currently out of them. They're sold out. This is a bit like a simple, manually powered device that gets air into the lungs and out with some precautions required of a manually operated device. It costs about $50 to make, all parts included, and all the parts in this proof of concept are common household items. So if I could make this in my apartment, I guess any competent engineer could make one even better. If you're good with metals, you can make one from metal and it actually becomes reliable. So let's see how it actually works. First of all, there's the pump, which is stroke limited, which means that the amount of air that gets pumped into the lungs is limited. This is important because the lungs can get damaged. So with whichever device, you first want to make sure that you're not causing damage. So this limits the amount of volume that goes into the lungs. I think that the recommended amount for human lungs would be like ½ liter, but for demonstration this is much more. And basically the air goes in through this pipe and into the lungs here. This is our model of the lungs, which is a thermophore, basically a rubber sac that expands and contracts like human lungs do. And for precautions, there is this overpressure release valve here, which is basically a plug sitting on top of a pipe which releases the pressure in case the pressure gets too high in the system, because you can damage the lungs by overexpanding them. Second of all, there's this the end there's this pressure measurement device, which is basically water in a bent tube with some soy sauce inside for coloring. This basically tells you the pressure in the lungs, and as you can see, the pressure goes up and down as expected, and then there is the exhaust pipe here. So you can see that the air actually gets out of the exhaust. It doesn't go back to the pump or anything like that. And you can also see that this overpressure release valve works. So if somebody accidentally pumps too hard, like I'll try now, you can see that the valve actually moved up and opened. So there was never too much pressure in the lungs. I think that limits should be 15 centimeters of H2O, but I'm not sure because I'm not a doctor. So let's take a look at the technical part of it. So first, there's the pump, stroke limited. It has a configurable amount which it expands. Then there is this overpressure release valve, which is basically a plug on top of a pipe which moves upwards when the pressure gets higher than the pressure of the weight that's put in this can on top. So it moves upwards and releases the air out, just to keep the pressure in the system within safety limits. Here's a sketch of how it works. So basically it's a plug with a weight on top. When the pressure is more than the pressure of the weight, it moves upwards and releases the air. The pressure gets lower and the pressure stays within some safety limits. This is made out of plastic, so maybe it sometimes gets stuck a little bit, so maybe it's good to test it. Then there is this, what I would call a switch valve, which is basically a valve. It has this moving plug inside. I used a toothpaste cup because it neatly fits this vitamin packaging that I had. And it moves between two positions, so okay, it's connected, it's attached to this spring or an elastic. I had an elastic only here, which pulls it back into position like here. So when you start pumping, it moves to this position here and blocks the air from exiting, so it goes into the lungs. And when you stop pumping, the elastic pulls the plug back into position like here, and then the air can exit the lungs through the exhaust. Here's a sketch. So, as I said, there's a moving plug connected to a spring. The spring should be like firm enough to pull the plug back, and the plug should fit tightly but still move. And there are two stoppers to make sure that the plug only moves between these two. And the reason why there's this another plastic tube on top is because you can't really have anything sticking inside, otherwise the plug cannot freely move, so I had to attach another plastic tube on top. And I use silver tape to keep things airtight. Ideally this would be a metal valve. All the parts are really simple to make, so it's not complicated. And ideally this would be welded together, so two metal pipes welded together. So on the inhale action, you pump air inside and it goes into the lungs. On the exhale action, it goes out of the lungs through the exhaust pipe. It's quite simple. And there's this pressure measurement device, a bent tube. Basically the pressure pushes water upside in one end, and that's it. Not very complicated. All the parts here are common household items. That being said, I wouldn't actually recommend this being used as it is because it's dirty, and the last thing you want to do is pump dirt into somebody's lungs, like really, you don't want to do that. But maybe if it would be properly cleaned, hopefully made of metal, and maybe there could be like a filter here, but be careful with that because it would also filter all the stuff that goes out of the lungs, which might be kind of, I don't know, a lot of stuff which might clog the filter quite quickly. Okay, and then there's this extra intake here that's plugged now, which could be used to put some medicine in, or maybe even additional oxygen. And that's it, apart from as far as the design goes. As you could see, this actually works. So if you pump too hard, the pressure never gets too high because the valve opens. It's fairly simple to make, and my personal request is that you don't annoy overworked medical professionals with this video, so please don't do this. Another thing is, I think we're currently a little bit overcomplicating things. You need to put air into the lungs. I mean, the modern devices are very well designed, but they take a lot of time to produce and are very complex and hard to make. And the reason why you go to a medical professional is because you trust them to perform a complex task reliably and with care. So maybe one could also trust the person to run a pump reliably. It's not a complex task, but who knows. Good luck, my best wishes.